Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
It's 5 minutes past 3 this Friday afternoon. If you're listening to us live or you're watching us live on our YouTube channel, or maybe you're catching us this evening on Off the Ball on News Talk, and Friday Night Racing on Off the Ball is brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie. You can follow the Twitter account at HRI Racing, and the hashtag is every racing moment. As ever, Johnny Ward is with us. Johnny, good afternoon to you.
How are you getting on, Ger?
Also with us, though, this week is Robbie Power, who has announced his retirement from the game. Robbie, first off, congratulations. That's the first thing to say when somebody announces their retirement after a career as glittering and brilliant as yours. How are you feeling now, a week on from the announcement, and after all the messages have slowly started to settle down?
Thanks very much, Ger. Yeah, no, I feel fantastic. And yeah, 2 weeks on now. I sat in the horse actually this morning for the first time since I got off Tiapu in Punchestown, and yeah, no, it's a weight off my shoulders. You know, it was great to get it out there and to finally do it. So no, I feel great.
You knew it was coming for a while.
Yeah, I did. I knew that sort of around middle of March time, I thought this would be my final season. The body's not able for another season, and it was hoping that at somewhere along between the middle of March and the end of April, that at one of the festivals I'd have a high or a good week that I could announce on a good note. And
what was the final part in March that happened for you that was like, okay, I've done this as long as I possibly can? Before I came back after breaking my hip in Tramore, I was with Enda King in Aintree and Niamh Guy, my physio at home, and Maria Keeley in Kilmeston. They've been working very hard on me, and I got the hip injected before I returned to race riding, and it did give me huge relief for a couple of weeks. But then with the arthritis I have in my hip, the injection wore off after a couple of weeks, and the whole way through, sort of from halfway through March until I retired, I was taking painkillers every day, and getting out of bed in the morning was becoming a struggle. And I knew that if we could get through the next 6 weeks, that I'd call time on it, but I didn't. I knew my body wasn't able for another season. Is that, obviously it's cumulative over a period of time, it gets worse. Is that going to ease off now that you're not putting your body through the rigours day in, day out?
Yeah, I think it has actually. I mean, I've done very little for the last 2 weeks. I went to actually badminton horse trials last weekend. My sister was competing there, and I actually thought coming home out of badminton with all the walking that I had to do that I'd be very sore, but it actually wasn't. And it just goes to show that when you're on horseback, the space between your hips are stretched the whole time, and it just was what was causing me the pain.
So that gives you hope that like the long-term repercussions might not be too serious, that maybe you're going to be grand for your retirement.
Yeah, well, I am at some stage because of the arthritis in my hip. I am going to have a hip replacement. I thought that would be sooner rather than later when I stopped riding. But the way everything has settled down over the last couple of weeks, I hopefully will put it off for a bit longer. Professor Quealy in Aintree, who's my surgeon, told me that he didn't want to see me until I was in excruciating pain. So hopefully we can put that off for a little bit longer.
Was it a good thing, Robbie, that your decision was almost kind of made for you?
Yeah, I suppose it was. There comes a time in every jockey's career that you have to hang up your boots, and not every jockey is as lucky as I was to get to do it on sort of my own terms. To go out on a good note in Punchestown was fantastic. But yeah, I suppose it was a little easier that the decision was made for me. That I did contemplate now over the last number of weeks before Punchestown that maybe I could. There'd be certain days I'd feel good, and I'd say, oh, maybe I can get another season out of it, you know. So even my agent on the Friday morning, he knew, and my wife Hannah knew that I was planning to announce my retirement that day. And he said to me, he says, are you sure you want to do this now? You're still riding well, and you can still maybe get another bit out of this. So I said, no, Kieran, I'm in enough pain as it is, so it's time to go.
I suppose, like, a jockey at that age, do you feel you were riding as well as ever, essentially, before you got the hip problems? How long does a jumps jockey at his peak, do you think?
Oh, sure. Look, the way jockeys sort of look after themselves nowadays, and the care that's out there for jockeys, you can be there for a long, long time. You know, there's so much better treatment now for recovery from injuries with places like Aintree, and Jennifer Pugh does a fantastic job, and the awareness for jockeys. If you keep yourself in good shape, you can ride for as long as you want.
And to be on the go for essentially 2 decades, like it's a rare thing to do, and to have, like, just looking at your stats, like even your last season you had a 15% strike rate, 18% strike rate in 2015, 2016, and I suppose you almost blossomed in the second half of your career more so.
Yeah, I did, I suppose. The results would say that. I thought I was riding as well in 2006 or 7 as I was in 2018 or 19. That's just the way it is. But there's no doubt with jockeys, especially national jockeys, the longer you're around, the more experience you get. You do get better with age. That's just common sense. The more riding you do and the more big winners you ride, the more confidence you get, and it definitely makes it a bit easier.
Robbie, people talk about Ruby Walsh's internal clock being very good. If you look back on your career, what was the thing that you were good at that allowed you to win those big races?
I suppose if you look back at my career, I suppose a lot of my winners were over fences. My big winners were over fences, and I think I enjoyed riding over fences a lot more than I did riding over hurdles. I had a good eye for a stride, and I think that was a huge benefit to me, riding over fences more so than hurdles. I suppose that was probably my greatest asset, was that I could see a stride maybe a bit earlier than some other jockeys. My show jumping career starting off doing would have been a huge help for that.
I was going to ask, was that your breeding? Your breeding lines would suggest that you're good at that.
Yeah, Daddy always said that. He said an eye for a stride is God given. You can't teach it to anyone. So but I suppose that's why I enjoyed riding over fences a lot more. I really, really enjoyed riding over fences. I thought I think a definitely better steeplechase jockey than I was a hurdle jockey.
This is maybe the dumbest question I've ever asked, but is there a momentary dopamine hit? Like, is it actually really enjoyable just to get that stride right every time, where you're like, good stride? Like in the middle of a race, are you actually at some level in your subconscious going, yeah, good, and that gives you pleasure?
Yeah, I used to get great pleasure out of riding novice chasers when you ride a horse that maybe hadn't been the best jumper in the world or something like that, and you hadn't been schooling great at home or that, and you get out in the chase track on it and you just get into a good rhythm and it jumps really well. That gave me huge satisfaction and doing that. Obviously in a race you're never always looking for the big strides, the ones outside the wings. You're always looking to get a horse into a rhythm and get him popping away, and that was what I took huge satisfaction out. Novice chasers, I just love riding novice chasers and getting them jumping. I got a huge thrill out of that.
And if that race goes well, do you have to win that?
Yeah, there was no satisfaction in finishing second, no matter when a horse jumps.
Horse jumped really well, got round, finished third. No thanks.
No thanks. No, yeah. Look, and sometimes you were happy to finish third, but no, never. Winning was everything. If a horse jumped well and won, that was great. Yeah.
I'm just interested in what your dad said. He said you can't teach that, because, like, what percentage of the law as a jumps jockey is to be able to identify that, because it gives you such an advantage that obviously you're never going to really relinquish.
To a certain extent, and there was times now in my career where seeing a stride so far away sometimes backfired on me, because you were going down to a fence and you knew you were all wrong, and you started trying to organise too far away from a fence sometimes, and that can backfire on you as well, where sometimes you're just better off just keeping the revs up. I always did try to keep the revs up on a horse, but if a horse wasn't giving you a good feel and you were going down maybe 6 or 7 strides away, you knew you were on a wrong stride, where the other jockey maybe didn't see it as early as you, he was keeping the revs up and going forward, and you might lose a length. Thankfully it didn't cost me any races, I don't think. Maybe it did, I don't know. But sometimes you could lose a length or two because you're seeing it a bit earlier and organising a bit sooner than you should be.
So when you're watching a race in over the last 20, 25, 30 years, who did you identify as watching a race, a jockey that was exceptional at that as well?
Oh, when I started off, Paul Carberry was the man every jockey wanted to ride. Like, I knew very early in my career that I was never going to be able to ride like Paul Carberry, so I had to go for my own style with the hump in the back. But Conor O'Dwyer was another one as well, who was just a joy to watch riding over fences. Conor on a novice chaser, he was absolutely brilliant on them, and a man watching that I watched an awful lot and learned an awful lot from watching.
It is like, I suppose everyone thinks like his or her era was like the time to be, but it does almost feel like the likes of Conor O'Dwyer and Carberry, that like when you watch them in a race, I mean, it was almost like it was a golden era of horsemanship, and like Carberry was just, you watched him at a fence and it actually gave you a thrill, and you mightn't even have a bet in the race, might be a novice chase in Clonmel or something, and it was just like poetry in motion pretty much.
Yeah, it was. I'm so lucky to have ridden in an era, a generation of the best jockeys that ever graced the racecourse, in my opinion. And you could start listing names forever and ever, and you'd leave someone out. But the likes of Paul was definitely, without any shadow of doubt, the most naturally talented jockey I ever rode against. But then the likes of Ruby, Barry, McCoy, Conrad Wire, Dickie Johnson, the list goes on and on and on. And I'm just so lucky that I rode in a generation with them, and delighted to say that I shared a way room with them.
Can you talk to us a bit about the transition from show jumping to national hunt? Was it always in your head from the time you were a kid and watching the show jumping that actually what you wanted was to be in the race and the maelstrom of the race, or was that something that kind of evolved as time went on? How did that happen?
It actually took a bit of time for me to settle into it, and luckily for me, when I started riding out and got my amateur license and started as a conditional, there was a lot of schooling races in Ireland. There still is, but even more so in them days. You had Punchestown, Fairyhouse, Thurles. There was an awful lot of schooling races, and I think when I started riding, Jesse would have had 80 or 90 horses in at the time, and going around in schooling races was a huge advantage to me. I know there's schooling races and they're not the same pace as a race, but it just helped my eye adjust to going that bit faster, to trying to pick up the strides. Because when I first started schooling at home, I couldn't see a stride going that gear quicker. I couldn't work it out at all. And I was always looking for the first one. The first stride is not always the best stride to take, and I was always looking for the first one and taking the first one. And it took me a while to adjust. But once I adjusted to the different stride pattern and the different speed, it made it a lot easier. But if there was no schooling races, I would have looked like a right bendy going out and race to start off with, I can tell you that.
Can you take us back a step before that? When did you decide you wanted to be a race jockey?
I always wanted to be a jockey. My father trained horses in the 80s and had plenty of success doing that. I used to ride out my Shetland pony with the strings, and Podge Gill was my father's stable jockey, and I had RP written across the front of my head, and always liked to ride out with Podge and do all them sort of things. But then I went into a career of riding ponies, show jumping all the way through. I rode in the point when I was 16 before I went to England, and I was 4 years in England show jumping, and I just financially couldn't see how the show jumping was going to work out, where I was going to get the big owner from to buy the big horses, because I wanted the show jump at the top level. I didn't want to do it at an ordinary level, so I couldn't see where that was going to come. So I decided to come back from England. I'd had enough of England and was getting fed up of English life as well, so I just wanted to come home and start afresh. My mother had a horse in training with Jesse at the time, so I went down there riding that out every day, and then got my conditional license, rode a winner as an amateur on my mother's mare in Thurles, or in Punchestown, on my first ride over hurdles, and that was huge satisfaction out of that. And then went to Paddy Mullins. I was conditional jockey to Paddy Mullins for 2 seasons, and learned a hell of a lot down there. That was an experience and a half, I can tell you that. He was a fantastic man to ride for and a great mentor as well. And it just sort of snowballed from there. But I think from a young age I always wanted to be a jockey, but always thought, with my father being 6'2", that I was never going to be the right height or right weight to be a jockey. What height did you end up yourself? I'm 5'10", I think. Right. Yeah, 5'10". I've got a bit of my mother's shortness as well, thanks. I'm happy medium between my mother and my father. Well, I was going to say, any more and you'd have been in significant trouble. 5'10", still pushing it. Yeah, it is, but a jump jockey can get away with that, and thankfully I have my father's build where I'm slim as well. So weight, like when I think it was 9 stone, nearly 10 stone when I was 16 years of age, and I just never matured a whole lot. When I came back from England, as I said, I was 4 years in England. When I came back, I was 20 years of age. Hadn't stood in the scales since I was 16, and stood in the scales, and the scales said 10 stone 7. And I thought, bloody hell, if it's 10 stone 7 now, I put a bit of effort into this, I can surely get down to 10 stone, and I got close to it anyway. And come here, when you were in England, was the dream to be an Olympic gold medalist and winning the Aga Khan in the RDS? That was what you were there for? That was kind of what your focus was? Yeah, it was to a certain extent, but on a Saturday during the winter, I got up early in the morning, got the horses exercised, and was in sitting down at 12 o'clock ready to watch Channel 4 racing.
Right.
That was all I was interested in during the winter, and I actually went racing a good bit during the winter, because winter's kind of the quiet time for show jumping, and I went racing a good bit in England when I was over there, just as a spectator.
And
I'm interested as well, you said, Robbie, that you kind of got fed up of England.
Yeah, I did. I was only 16, and I'd been away from home for 4 years, and got fed up as well, in the sense that I didn't see it progressing any further. You know, when you don't see a progression coming, it kind of gets, and everything was getting a bit stale. Everything gets a bit stale, you know. So it was time for me to come home.
so the nice easy life of a national hunt jump jockey in Ireland, it's like, right, out of the frying pan into the fire. I guess the thing that you mentioned there that happens is an early winner, which obviously is like this incredible adrenaline rush where you're thinking, I want more of this.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, when I crossed that line, it was an unbelievable feeling to ride your first winner. I can remember it as clear as day. I can remember it as clear as my last. It was a fantastic thrill, and yeah, once I got off that one, then I was bitten by the bug, and as I say, I went a conditional to Paddy Mullins, and was still riding out in Jesse's as well, 1 day a week. So I couldn't believe when I turned conditional in first week in January. I had my interview in the Turf Club. I rode my first winner on Hennessy Day in Leopardstown as a conditional, so it happened pretty quick for me. I was very lucky in that sense.
And you mentioned Paddy Mullins there, Puppy. What was he like? For me, he's one of the most intriguing men that ever graced a race course. And I remember going back, it's 20 years next year since Nearly a Moose won the Galway Plate. I mean, he was, I suppose, a bit of an enigma, but what was he like to be associated with and as a tutor?
Oh, fantastic. He was a man of very few words. He didn't say a whole pile, but what he did say you took note of, that was for sure. He was a genius with horses as well. I remember getting off a horse one day and telling him, you're going to struggle with this one, boss. And he just turned around and said to me, I'll prove you wrong. And sure enough, he proved me wrong. It went on, I think, maybe 7 or 8 runs later to win 3 or 4 on the bounce, you know. So, no, he was a genius of a trainer. And as I say, in his 83rd year, an Oaks winner and a Galway Plate winner in the same season, that just goes to show a classic on the flat and a handicap in Galway, that he could turn his hand to anything when it came to horses.
That's not
Did
bad.
he say much to you in Galway?
I don't think so. Paddy never said anything to you after a winner. He was very no, he would never give you heap huge praise on you, nor would he put you down too much. He was always filling you with confidence as well. And I remember getting off a horse one day, and I turned to give my my debrief after the race, and he just said to me, I'll talk to you in the morning. And I thought, oh my God. I went home that evening, I didn't sleep a wink. Arrived into the yard at 7:45 the next morning, and he pulled me aside and told me what I'd done wrong. And I was like, why didn't you say that to me yesterday, boss? And he said, if I gave you a bollocking in the parade, the owners mightn't want you the next day, and I want you on that horse the next day. And that was his. He had a method or theory behind everything. And yeah, he was a genius of a man.
And was
like his son.
Was it actually a bollocking, or was it like a polite kind of, listen, you did that wrong, don't do it again?
Yeah, basically. He knew, like, if Paddy Mullins didn't have faith in you riding the horse, he didn't put you up on the horse. He knew going out there. He said to me one day, I asked him, should I be doing? And he said, if you don't know what you're doing, I have the wrong man riding him. So he never gave you instructions. He was confident in you. Even at that young age, I was, he was confident I knew what I was doing. And that filled you with confidence as a jockey as well. Yeah, no, he was an unbelievable man.
There's a story, Ger, where I think Willie and Tony were both riding in Goran or somewhere anyway, and Paddy was driving home and he was disgusted that I think neither of them had a winner on the day, and they'd both been riding for him, and he turned to Maureen and he said, your sons will be the death of me. And I think like they always got that wit from him as well. Like they're 3 totally different sons, the 3 trainers, but there's always kind of crack with them and something special about them as well.
We had our choice of a gazillion different races that we could have pulled from for some highlights, but we've actually gone for it's not off Broadway at all, but it's a slightly different one. You won a Cheltenham Gold Cup on Sizing John, which is obviously a bigger race than the Punchestown Gold Cup, but it was such an amazing race that we're going to just play the clip of this one. So this is Sizing John winning the thrilling 2017 Punchestown Gold Cup. Have a look.
On the left, the red jacket. Connie Green, Nico de Boyne. Jacket down, Ruby Watches the centre. Red capsizing John Robbie Power on the near side. They're on the run down towards the final fence now. Jacket down in the centre, subsiding John Connie Green. Coming down the last now. Jacket down, subsiding John Connie Green on the inside.
Yeah, that is some finish. What do you remember about that?
Yeah, I remember every bit of it. It was probably the most exciting race I ever rode in. One of the best races I ever rode in, without a shadow of a doubt. Conor Gree jumped off and went an unbelievable gallop. There was no let up whatsoever. I don't think Tyson John was at his best on that day, but yeah, no, it was an unbelievable. I thought when I made a mistake at the second last that was it. I was going to be beaten, and then Jackadam made a mistake at the last and gave me another look in the door, and thankfully for Tyson John, he put his head down and battled all the way to the line. You know, it was an unbelievable performance to come back after Cheltenham and put up a performance like that in Punchestown. Was an unbelievable training performance as well. Do
you know you've won the race at the end, or do you have to wait for the photo finish to be announced?
No, I actually, when I crossed the line, I kind of thought I was up, and then I knew by Ruby's expression that I thought he was down. And I actually had a little wave to the crowd, and then just after I waved to the crowd, I thought to myself, oh, it's a bit close to be doing that, maybe I shouldn't. No, thankfully, I actually thought I'd won by more than I did. I think the official margin was a short head. I thought I'd won by a head or a bit more than that. So, yeah, no, I was always confident that I was up, but there's always that split second when it was taking that little bit longer for the announcer to say first number, whatever number Tyson John was that day, first number 5, I don't know. It just puts that little bit of doubt in your mind, and you're thinking, oh no, I made an eagle of myself.
And what was the relationship with Alan Potts like, Poppy? Because he probably had a reputation for being a bit of a stern man or whatever. Didn't seem to talk to the press that much. But what was he like to ride for?
I didn't talk to him very often either. At that stage in his career, Anne had been sick. I think that was the last day that they were. Actually, that was the last day we were both racing, because shortly after Punchestown, Anne, Lord of Russian, she passed away, and then a few months later, Alan did. But Anne was a lovely woman. When I did meet them at the race, she was a fantastic woman, and I suppose it's very hard for me to say what they were like to ride for, because for the short period of time I rode for them, they were just everything went right. You know, there was winner after winner. My first sort of major festival as their retained rider, I rode 5 horses for them in Aintree, and 4 of them won 3 Grade 1s. So yeah, they were pretty straightforward for me to ride for anyway.
It is kind of one of those sliding doors moments as well, that you end up riding for the Potts, and that where that took you in your career.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, it was Alan who wanted me riding all his horses, and then after Aintree, riding 4 winners for the Tizzards in Aintree, and then coming back to Punchestown, riding another couple of winners for Colin as well, and more Tyson John winning for Jesse as well, and it was just yeah, it was huge, and that opportunity to go over and ride in England for Colin Tizzard was brought on from Alan. And when we started the following season, I went over and had a chat with Colin Tizzard, and he said that most of the owners were happy for me to ride his horses. So whenever I was over riding for Alan or on a Saturday, if I could be over to ride for them, even if Alan and Anne didn't have a runner, they wanted to use me. So it opened a good door for me, and I suppose opened that door into the likes of Lost in Translation and Reserve Tank and other horses like that.
In retrospect, what was the starting point for that, do you think? Like, 'cause it's obviously a game changer in terms of like your status in the sport. Even though you're still the same person, you're still riding at the same level and the same ability with obviously more experience. But in retrospect, what do you think was the bit that got you that break?
Winners. Winning the Gold Cup and Tyson John definitely gave me the break with Alan and Ann Potts, and then riding 4 winners at Aintree for the Tizzards, for Colin Tizzard definitely was the break for them. And when it came to the following that Chepstow meeting in October is always the sort of kickstart for Colin Tizard's season. And when we went to that meeting, I think that was the first day I rode Lost in Translation as well, and I think I rode a couple of winners from at that meeting. So winners. Colin Tizard was driven same as me. He was driven by winners. So when I was riding winners for him and was coming over, he was happy to use me on all horses, not even just on the lands.
And Robbie, do you think you were a different person? Like, if that had happened to you 10 years previously when you were younger, would you have been ready for that and able for that and just able to do all the business that comes with being essentially a sole trader when it comes to those opportunities? Or was that just timing? It didn't really matter what age you were and what level of experience you had in the world?
Well, I definitely think having the experience and the confidence, it couldn't have come at a better time, confidence-wise and experience-wise, I suppose. But I'd like to think that if I had come along 5 years earlier or 10 years earlier, that I would have been able to handle the situation. I had ridden, if you go up 10 years before 2017, I had ridden some big winners as well. So I do think I would have been able to handle the situation. But it was, and having company as well when you were travelling. Barry was still riding and Ruby was still riding as well, but wasn't travelling as much. But Barry was travelling the whole time back and forward, and myself and Barry are good friends for the last 25 years. So travelling back and forward with him then as well was made the whole thing a bit easier. Them early mornings on a Saturday or a Wednesday or whatever day it is, getting up at 5 o'clock to head to the airport and not getting home till 10 or 11 o'clock that night is they're long days. But when you have someone with you who's a good friend of yours, it's good company, it makes it a lot easier. Yeah,
and also a peer who you can go, geez, I really screwed up there, or that went really well for me, or I got a bit of a break there, or that guy's a bit of an asshole and stay away from him. That helps as well, because you can actually, you're in competition, but you're not really.
No, exactly. Yeah, we were going to do a day's work, and win, lose or draw, whatever happened, we were travelling home together anyway, and I think we had good respect for each other anyway. So yeah, no, it was always good to have someone there to rub off and to chat with. There's nothing worse. I've done trips on my own as well when you're sitting in the airport on your own and all you're doing is fiddling with your phone. So it's always great to have a bit of company with you.
We were talking.
You're really part of a golden generation.
Oh, definitely, no doubt about that. Yeah, I was lucky to have, as I say, to have shared a weigh room with the best jockeys I think that ever graced the racecourse anyway, male and female.
We were talking a little bit earlier about the ability to find a stride and also the track record of people who you worked with very early on in your career. Because of that and because of the grounding that you had, when your winners started to come, you were ready for them as well. Because sometimes myself and Johnny will talk to jockeys who've won a massive race out of nowhere and we're like, oh, this is going to change your career. And they're like, well, not really. The phone hasn't, there's no difference in the number of people ringing me. And that seems to be the case. It's not like, I guess what I'm trying to talk about here is you winning the Grand National with a very young trainer on Silver Birch at 33-1, which is kind of a massive moment in Gordon Elliott's life. But for you, whatever came afterwards, everybody was happy to use you more. Was that a big injection in terms of people coming to you and saying, we want to work with you?
Oh, it definitely was. When you ride a big winner, it doesn't matter what stage in your career it is. When you ride a big winner, it's there. They can't take it away from you. And if a trainer is thinking about using you, you can go, well, I've been lucky enough to win that race. And okay, we can use you in that race. There's, definitely, it doesn't matter what stage it is. But I definitely do think, maybe I was younger and was an up-and-coming jockey, but I definitely do think that riding winners, when I won the Galway Plate in 2003, I was never as busy as I was for the next 6 months for a long time in my career riding. Because I won the Galway Plate, which is the first major jumps race of the season. I still had a bit of a claim as well. I think I still had a £3 claim. So I was very busy for the next few months riding for trainers that I'd never ridden for before because they'd seen you. And that doesn't happen so much nowadays because
it's more
I think a lot of it's to do is with the trainers' difficulty in getting staff, that they have to kind of use their own jockeys rather than bringing in outside jockeys to ride their horses. Back when I started, there was no issue with staff in Ireland, but nowadays there's a huge issue with staff in Ireland, and trainers kind of have to stay loyal to their own more nowadays than they did back then. And that does happen then on the big day. Obviously, the trainer has to change, but as a £3 claimer back in 2003, I was very, very busy because I'd ridden a big winner, and trainers had enough staff. They didn't care what jockey they used. They went for the best available, and they wanted to take £3 off a horse, they were getting me.
And go on, sorry, Johnny.
Where do you go from now?
Sorry?
Where do you go from here?
I'm taking a couple of months off. I'm going to let everything settle down. I've had a few interesting phone calls about job offers for the future, but I've told everybody that I'm taking a couple of months off, and I'm just going to sit back and weigh up my options going forward. I'm having a job done on my gallop on the yard here at home and getting the gallop resurfaced and all that. I'm not going to train horses, I can guarantee you that.
I was going to ask. It's like, a gallop, you say?
I would be open to pre-training and doing that sort of thing, but yeah, I'm just going to weigh up my options and see what offers are on the table over the next couple of months.
Offers in different fields, offers like, is there something specific that you're like, you mentioned pre-training there, was that an accident or was that like, that's kind of the direction I'm heading in, do you think?
No, I would quite like to work with some young horses and pre-train horses if somebody wants to send horses before they go to the big trainers to me, then I'd be more than happy to take them. And I would like to do a lot with what my father did for years with teaching horses, young horses, how to jump, or horses that have had problems on the track with their jumping and trying to correct that. I love working with horses with their jumping and getting horses jumping well. That's something I've always enjoyed, and I enjoyed helping Daddy with that, and Daddy's still around to help me with it now if I wanted. So I'd really enjoy doing that because I love getting an ordinary horse jump and turn them into a good jumper. I get great satisfaction out of that, and I most definitely want to stay involved in national hunt racing. There's no shadow of a doubt, and I want to have a reason to go racing. And if I had a horse here for 2 weeks that I've been schooling and got him jumping well, and he was running a novice chase in Ferrios or Navan, it'd give me great pleasure to go and watch him jump around and hopefully win.
And just, you mentioned your dad, Robbie, how pivotal and instrumental has he been in your whole life to this point?
Well, my whole family have been huge. My father had a very bad accident in '88, and my mother sort of took us under her wing and did all the early steps with us, getting us going on ponies, getting us out hunting, doing all them sort of things as kids. And then when we started going to shows on 12-2s and 13-2s and 14-2s, we had a brilliant trainer in our father, but myself and my sister. So we wanted for nothing in that sense. But when it came to racing, I don't think Daddy he never criticised the ride I'd give a horse. He'd criticise if I was riding bad down to an obstacle, but he'd never criticise the ride, because Daddy never rode as a jockey. He wouldn't understand and didn't claim to understand race riding or the pace of a race or things like that. But if you came back in after making a mistake at the last and getting beaten on one, he might say to you, "What were you doing going down to the last?" Or "Why didn't you do this?" Or "Why didn't you keep going forward?" Them sort of things. He was very critical of that.
I'd say you loved that, did you?
I did, but sure, that's what you need, and that's what made you the better rider. You need criticism. Every jockey needs a certain amount of criticism to make you a better rider. And Daddy wouldn't have criticised me he probably would if I wasn't able to take it. But you had no choice in them days. You took it, and that was it. And he was right. When I made a mistake on a horse, I was always the first one to come back in and put my hands up and say, "I made a mess of that." I often did that. And when you make a mistake at the last or at any fence in a race, when you've gone 2 strides the back of that fence what you did wrong. Straight away. A lot of times, because you had forward momentum, I got away with it, especially down to the last couple of fences. But there were 1 or 2 times where I got beaten on ones that made a mistake, and they shouldn't have probably made the mistake. It was my own fault.
Looking back on your career, obviously there are incredible highlights that it starts with a bang and finishes with a bang, and there's basically everything that you would want to win as a national hunt jockey in between. Were there down periods where you were like, "Oh, I've had enough of this," right? And I'm not talking about the injuries, because obviously that's, they're horrific, but it does seem to be kind of part of the job description at some level, unfortunately. Were there ebb and flow moments where you're like, "I've had enough of this, I'm sickened by this"?
No, I don't think so. I think there was one stage, I can't remember what year it was, but it could have been back around 2008 or 9. We started off that summer, and come the end of August, I think I only ridden 4 winners for the whole summer, and was contemplating, should I go to England or should I do something different? Things weren't just going the way I wanted them to go. And next thing, all of a sudden, just turned the corner, and I think I rode probably 20 winners, or maybe more than 20 winners between the beginning of September and Christmas. It just, for some reason, what I don't know, it just turned. But I'd had a bad summer that year and hadn't been injured all summer, so that wasn't an excuse. But yeah, just for whatever reason, I don't know that year. But that was the only time ever, I think, where I thought about moving on and going somewhere else, going to England, or trying something different. But if a job offer had come available in England back then, I probably would have gone. But thankfully it didn't, and I stayed here, and things picked up pretty soon after that.
And in the end, being able to bilocate between England and Ireland at that level, then when you did get on the great horses, that was, I guess, like, as we talk about, a massive moment in retrospect in your career, and that kind of elevates your career to a level where you're in that company of all those great jockeys.
Yeah, exactly. You know, every day I was riding a lot more. I was an awful lot busier going back and forth to England. And the way the schedule is both in England and Ireland, it works out perfectly, because Saturday's a big day in England and Sunday's a big day in Ireland. So every Saturday you were flying over to Newbury or Sandown or Ascot or wherever it might be, and coming back then on a Sunday for Navan or Punchestown or Fairyhouse, wherever the big meeting was in Ireland, and you were getting the best of both worlds. The odd time in the season there was going to be a clash. I think there was a clash once. I think only ever once where it affected me. Obviously, it would have affected Ruby and Barry a lot more, but there was a good horse running on a Sunday in England. But the Dublin Racing Festival, Lost in Translation, ran one day in the City Isles in Sandown, and I was over here in Ireland riding at the Dublin Racing Festival. So that was the only time there was ever, I think, where Colin Tizard wanted me in England and Jesse wanted me in Ireland. But the Dublin Racing Festival was the Dublin Racing Festival, and I was staying here. And thankfully, Super Sunday won the Irish Champion Hurdle that day as well. So it worked out in my favour for once that time.
When you finished up at Punchestown, what was going through your head? Was there a specific moment or a race that you were looking back on, or that kind of flicked across your mind and went, oh yeah, okay, that's it. That's the bit that I'm taking with me here?
I think my last winner, Magic Days, a novice in a handicap chase, jumped like a buck, made all. I got huge satisfaction out of that. Everything that happened in the race was just what I loved doing. Riding a novice at speed, jumping from fence to fence. And if I hadn't have had rides the following day, I would have gone there and then. But I had good rides coming up later on that Thursday. I had Ashdale Bob in the Stairs Hurdle, who just got beaten. And then I had Tiapu and Rapid Response the following day. So I didn't want to let anyone down. Jessica Harrington been so good to me for 20 plus years, and I wasn't going to go out on a winner when I had more book rides coming up for the next 2 days. So when my agent rang me on Thursday morning to book rides for Saturday, I said no. I said, we're not riding Saturday. I have good rides today and tomorrow. Hopefully one will win, and if I ride a winner on TV, I'll announce it then. But if I don't, I'm getting off Tiapu and I'm announcing my retirement then.
Right.
Did you get off Magic Days sort of thinking, like, okay, if I don't have another winner, that would not be a bad way to bow out?
I was happy getting off her. That was great satisfaction. I got a huge buzz out of that, and I was happy to announce my retirement there and then. But as I said, I did want to ride on because I had booked rides, and I didn't want to not ride. So I was, I wanted to keep going until. That's why I didn't take any rides on the Saturday.
Well, listen, Robbie, it's a sensational career that you've put together. We wish you the very best of luck in whatever comes next, and specifically enjoy the few months off. Are you going to get away and get some sun? What's the plan for the next few months?
Yeah, I am flying over to London tomorrow morning for the FA Cup final with a few friends of mine, and then going on holiday with the family in June. But being a big Liverpool supporter, obviously the Champions League final comes before that, so I'm going to being a Liverpool fan, it's a good job I retired when I did, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to go to all these things.
Did you get tickets for Paris?
I have a ticket for Paris, I do.
Very nice, very nice. Jesus.
Yeah.
That is, at the moment, currently priceless.
Tilly Vale Ger wants one.
If you hear of any more going, just let us know. Well, listen, congratulations, and I wish you the best of the 2 cup finals as well, Robbie. Great stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks a million, Ger.
It's
all the best.
Robbie Power there, as I said, putting together an absolutely sensational career. That's the first part of this edition of Friday Night Racing, brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie and the hashtag is every racing moment.
Friday Night Racing.
On Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie. Friday Night Racing.
On Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
The countdown to the Tote 10 to follow for the flat season has begun, with entries opening on Monday the 23rd of May. This gives you plenty of time to study form and make your selections for the season ahead, both free and paid for 10 to follow games available. Check out tote.ie for more details. It's another busy period of race sponsorship for Tote, with the Tote Always SP or Better handicap taking place at Naas on Sunday, and the 2022 renewal of the Tote Killarney National at Killarney on Monday. Johnny, we can talk a bit about those in a few minutes, but you were in Aidan O'Brien's on Monday.
Yeah, good visit. Sure, it was always a nice day to spend in Ballydoyle, and just it's like a 5-star hotel for racehorses. And if it wasn't a particularly nice morning, but you'd be blown away by it as they come up to you on the gallop, and one after the other. And there's even a little speedometer on the side of the gallops, which is clocking every horse as it passes, like 41, 43, 48. And Aidan was in great form. He just spoke about, like, I guess his Derby horses. He was basically winning every trial around him until Desert Crown won during the week. But he had Luxembourg, who was favourite for the Derby. He more or less ruled him out a day or two beforehand, but he has Stone Age changing of the guard, Star of India, so he has like all these potential contenders. And it's actually shaping up to be, despite Luxembourg not being there, it's shaping up to be a hell of a Derby now. And Sir Michael Stout having a contender as good as the favourite is kind of rolling back the years as well.
So how many contenders are there realistic? I mean, look, we whittled the field down, and then an outsider wins at 40 to 1, and you're like, oh well, okay, so it's obviously very difficult to predict the winner. But what do you think, when the betting comes to be made and they're talking about the realistic contenders, how many will there be in the end?
It's hard to know, because Epsom's a mad racetrack. Like, so strange things can happen at Epsom. We've had some massive prize winners in recent years, and that does happen for a reason. Sometimes pacemakers get away, they're ignored. There's a lot of there's a camber there, there's a lot of twisting and turning. It's a very, very unusual racetrack to be running a race as good as the Derby, but such as the nature of the race anyway. And that having been said, I think you could easily make a case for 6 or 7 of them. Pisbadil, who's trained by Donncha O'Brien, he's a very good horse. The form of his Leopardstown win last time is working out really well. I could see him possibly being a Ledger horse down the line, but he's certainly a very good horse. Changing of the guard beat a very well fancied horse for the Derby easily at Chester, and he just seems to be improving with time. And obviously Desert Crown was brilliant during the week. He's really unexposed as well, so I think it's a cracking Derby. I have to say, it's really shaping up to be one of the vintage Derbies of our time. And we spoke to a jockey who was definitely part of a golden generation. This is a very, very good Derby.
A quick reflection on the career of Robbie Power, because now that he's not here, we can say even nicer things about him. Irish people are not great at taking compliments, but he deserves them, because he's humble enough about the decision to get involved in English racing at the time that he did. It was about winners. People wanted him, they wanted his services, and they wanted his services because he was very good.
Yeah, he was, and I think like the thing with the Colin Tizard link up was very interesting, because some had kind of come and gone in that job, and he entrusted Robbie at around the time when Colin Tizard started to get some seriously good horses, and that came out of the Potts link. But he liked Robbie so much that he was essentially riding all his best horses, and this was in his late 30s really when this happened. And he's a good indication of somebody who persevered and kept going and got his reward eventually. He would say himself, he wasn't the most stylish jockey in the world, but a real horseman and totally bred for the job. And I always found Robbie, I always find him just a decent fella. He's there's no real crap out of him. He tells it as it is. He doesn't big himself up, but really, really good horseman. And you could tell sort of why he loved novice chases, because he was brilliant in novice chases. You'd see him schooling a horse that was kind of raw at the job, and both of them kind of living it and enjoying it as the race developed. He'd Paddy Mullins, to work for him, like I think Paddy Mullins is an absolute genius in terms of horses. You can see the dynasty now that has come from Paddy Mullins, but he was way ahead of his time, and I think you had a nice insight from him there. But so Robbie benefited greatly from that, and Jessica Harrington as well, such a loyal trainer to be involved with. And it's interesting, he was a little bit kind of vague and maybe nuanced on what he's going to do in retirement. But I think the story of Robbie Power is only halfway there at this stage.
Yeah, it's funny how you talk about Paddy Mullins. In American football, they talk about the coaching tree of these great coaches. And I suspect that there's loads of other people who have crossed paths at various important moments in their careers for a year or 2 years or 3 years, who aren't his sons, but who have gone on to have amazing careers, who lean back on their experiences with him and have been formed in seminal moments by his advice or his behaviour or his condition, how he conditions people to behave. And I think the influence is clearly being carried on by his bloodlines, but also I suspect by countless other people that were kind of unaware of the importance that he had at various stages. Let's talk about the racing this weekend. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, there's only one place to start. Newbury tomorrow, the Lockhinge. Baid, he's a son of See the Stars. He's going to be a sensation, I think, at stud because he's so quick. He's essentially a miler. Brilliant horse for Jim Crowley to get sort of at this stage of his career. Jim Crowley, the next jump jockey himself. I remember his dad used to give us word for Jim's horses. His dad used to work in Setanta back in the day, Ger. We had our days in Setanta, and Jim's dad used to give us word for Jim's horses. It was good words at the time. That was over jumps. Little did I think he'd become a flat jockey, but he's riding the best miler probably in the world in Baid, who takes on Mother Earth, Aidan O'Brien's filly. She never runs a bad race, but it's going to be very, very difficult for her here. And you see how good this race is. Like, alcohol free is rated 117, but he's a 14-1 shot because Baid is that good. And as much as he only beat Palace Bear by a neck when we last saw him, I thought he was quite superior on the day. It was a bit of a messy race, and he's a really, really sensational stallion prospect, I think, and will continue the legacy of See the Stars as well.
Baid's 11-4 on in that race. Can you see him getting overturned?
It's his first run back. You can get 1-2. I mean, wouldn't be for me maybe his first run back, but I think if he's solid in the market, you're fully expecting him to win. He's a class apart, and he wouldn't want a muddling race. That'd be the only thing. But with 9 runners, he should be okay on that score. Okay.
What about the Irish racing this weekend?
Yeah, very good racing at Navan tomorrow. The main race there would be the Yates Stakes, which obviously honours the great stayer Yates. And Arbutus is a fascinating horse here. Won first time out. Aidan O'Brien had 3 horses in a course and distance maiden 3 weeks ago. They finished first, second and third, and he was the biggest price of the lot of them, and he won well. Now, you can either imply that he wasn't showing enough at home or that he needed the run or whatever it is, but I'm not letting my eyes deceive me. He was very, very good. I think he'll take an awful lot of beating. Another star 3-year-old from the Aidan O'Brien battalion. And obviously then we have the Coolmore Sprint and the Goss-Lacken Stakes at Naas, one of my favourite racetracks on Sunday. So if you're not doing anything on Sunday, get along to Naas. Hopefully the weather is nice, and it's some cracking racing this weekend, and all eyes on Baid, I guess.
All right, Johnny, good stuff. That's this week's episode of Friday Night Racing in the books. Thanks very much for joining us. As I said a little bit earlier, we broadcast live every Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock across Off the Ball social channels. You'll get us on youtube.com/Off the Ball or on Twitter as well, and then obviously on Friday evenings at 8 we are live, all in association with Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment, and we will see you next Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Take care.
Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.